What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Hangover. This is usually the post-game show, the day after reaction. We didn't get to react to the last one. I know a lot of us have already have, so we're going to be talking about the bye week and other things. But with me, as always, Shannon White. How you doing, my man? How did you enjoy the stress-free football weekend?
I'm doing great. It was as you say, stress-free. I miss Steeler football once I'm in the swing of things. So, but the bye week's always good to give guys the chance to heal up and get some of the guys back off IR and get ready for that second half of the season. So, but yeah, I miss them when they don't play.
Yeah, I agree. It makes the week go longer. When they play on prime time at night, it also makes the day go by longer. So I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
For me, it was good to just kind of sit there and watch the games and see what's going on. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, for the Steelers in the AFC North, I was hoping for a few upsets. Only there was no upsets. The Ravens and the Bengals ended up winning. The Browns lost in very, very crazy fashion. I mean, a lot of people were thinking that the Browns might be on the up and up without Deshaun Watson. Maybe hold your brakes on that. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think that the Browns franchise, they realize what's up because they traded Amari Cooper and they're already looking to next year, whether the fans are or not. Because it's one thing to bring in Jameis Winston, which I do believe is an upgrade, but now you don't have as much talent to throw to. So that kind of shows where they're accepting kind of where they are.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think it was a little coming down to facing reality there. It wasn't just Deshaun Watson. It was the entire team that isn't very good. But no news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a lot of people were expecting and anticipating some big news to happen. Now, there's still some time. The Steelers still have some time until the trade deadline. No wide receiver news as of yet. Are you surprised by that?
Not really. The market's pretty thin. The cupboard's bare. A lot of teams that were going to trade have got injuries now, or like the Rams, they suddenly find themselves back in contention. So that took Cooper Kupp off the board. The Jets have injuries, so don't even know if they'll move Williams. The Giants, that division's top heavy, so they might still try to move Slayton, or the Panthers, they traded away Deontay Johnson. They might move Adam Thielen, which to me is the most realistic option for the Steelers right now. But there's nothing game changing unless the Steelers pull off something massive that we're not expecting. It can help strengthen the team, the receiver corps for the second half, but I don't think there's a real difference maker left out there.
Yeah, I think there's very few. But the Steelers were interested in Christian Kirk. That has been brought up to attention that if it wasn't for the broken collarbone, they were going to go out there and pick him up. I don't understand why they didn't pick him up before he hurt himself. Allowing him to go out there and play. The same thing with Cooper Kupp, allowing him to stay on the Rams, go out there and show that another game that he can do well. And then they take the trade off of the table. Had they just put up whatever it is that they needed before those games, it would be a bit different situation for both of those players. And but for me, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet, solely because of the fact that we've had so many issues, or not so many issues, but so many situations where the Steelers were very close or almost pulling the trigger on a wide receiver out there, whether it was Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, or Devontae Adams, or amongst all the other ones that have had also been brought up in the spotlight. Now, to me, there's only one day left. So you got to make a decision. Do you go in with what you have, or are you going to continue to try to make a choice? And I think that there are a couple of wide receivers that are out there. I'll go one by one with you and let me know what you think about them. And so the first one, the 49ers aren't doing so hot. Do you think there's any opportunity they trade Deebo Samuel?
No, I don't think they'll trade him. I think that they're still when they get McCaffrey back, they could easily win 7-8 in a row. And I think they know that, and they're built to win now, and not next season, not the year after. I mean, their window's tightening, so I don't trade him now.
Yeah, I think that one's also a no for me, especially because of the injury to Brandon Ayuk. They don't have, they're a little bit limited at this point. Even Juwan Jennings has been dealing with some injuries as well. I know because he's on my fantasy team and he hasn't played yet. So, I know they're hurting for wide receivers, so I'm not really seeing that as a possibility. What about one of the wide receivers in Miami? Miami hasn't been doing too hot. They got Tua back, but they still have continued to lose, even though they've been playing better. Any chance we see maybe a Waddle or a Tyreek Hill be putting up on the trade block?
Well, I think Tyreek Hill's too expensive, both salary and what capital it would take to get him. And I don't know if he's a good fit for the culture at all. We kind of forget some of the things off the field with Tyreek Hill because he's such an explosive player on it. But I don't really think they'd be that interested. Now Waddle is a very talented number two. And as you say, it doesn't look like Miami is going anywhere this year because they've got all the questions to answer about Tua. But they're not going to give him away. I thought, which I don't know, you might going to be mentioning this guy in a minute, so I'll hold off. But there was one guy I thought that could be a possibility, and then heavily got killed yesterday. So,
well, I'm not sure who that is, but I want to hear both sides of that story of who you think it is, and then why he almost got killed yesterday.
Well, Chris Olave.
Oh yeah, I was just about to bring him up.
That's what I was saying. The Saints are not going anywhere. Yeah. They look good the first 2 weeks of the season, and they look like crap ever since then. But he tried to catch a pass across the middle, and he literally got his. I mean, it was so bad. It looked like the Daryl Stingley hit that back in the 80s with the Raiders that paralyzed him. It was spooky. It really was a terrible blow. And he was knocked out, and they had to take him off on a cart. And I think he'll be out for a few weeks, minimum. I think he has I haven't heard today, but it has to be a massive concussion in the minimum.
Right. Yeah, I heard that because I didn't see the play. I knew that he was out because he is also on my fantasy team.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness.
I knew he got a concussion and he was out. I knew that people were talking about it being a serious injury. And I remember watching the part of the Monday night or the Sunday night game and then mentioning that they had some positive signs for him, that he was moving and that he was alert and a bunch of other things of that nature. And so, to me, I think that this is also his second concussion. I would think that he's probably going to take some time off. Like, you're absolutely right with that. And, even if it's like a 2-week thing or maybe 3-week thing, and then he comes back, I mean, how many more weeks is that into the season? How much is he going to be able to prepare by then to get on the moving train, to be ready? I mean, and that's going to be in the middle of the toughest part of the schedule. Yeah. Where things matter the most. So I'm a little bit concerned about Olave as well, but he is an option that was out there. The next option I have is going to be DK Metcalf. The Seattle Seahawks haven't been doing too well. There was some speculation earlier on this year that the Steelers might be interested in a DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson practiced with him throughout the offseason, and there was some speculation that he may be lobbying for DK to come over to Pittsburgh. What do you think? How do you think that would work? First and foremost, George Pickens and DK Metcalf on both sides. Is that a formula or a pair that you see doing some great things?
I think they'd be a tough cover. I mean, there's no doubt. Yeah. I mean, that size speed factor. I don't know who's going to match up with them. I think at the very least it would open up everybody else. I just don't know how realistic it is. I think did DK Metcalf play Sunday?
I believe he did. Double check
because I know he'd been hurt and he'd missed some time. I thought Lockett was a more realistic option because I think what the Steelers need is a proven number two who can get open reliably, consistently, catch third down balls, and move the chains. If they can get that on that other side, and that will help free up Pickens and Freiermuth. So I thought all along that Lockett would be the more realistic target and the cheaper target because he's older, but he has a ton of experience with Wilson.
Yeah, he definitely does. But does Tyler Lockett really fill the build of the receiver that we're kind of needing? I mean, a bigger bodied receiver. I think one of the biggest question marks is if George Pickens goes out, do we have a receiver that can somewhat fill in that big body void? I'm not sure if Tyler Lockett is that. I mean, we have a bunch of other smaller guys already on the field. DK Metcalf, or even and I'm going to bring him up in a little bit, but a Darius Slaughter are bigger guys that I think that potentially could, fill in that road. Mike Williams is another guy that's a bigger body. How do you factor that in when it comes to like a Tyler Lockett and a smaller wide receiver?
Well, like I said, I don't think that they need another Pickens. It would be great to have a guy similar physique, but it's like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing tonight. There's only one Mike Evans. So there's really nobody they can bring in, even if Godwin wasn't hurt also. There's nobody you can bring in to mimic what Evans does. If Pickens goes out, there's nobody. Most of the guys who can mimic what Pickens does, say CC Lamb, or as you say, Metcalf, or somebody like that, you're not getting them guys. You can't afford them guys. Whereas we know that Lockett on the other side will, one, not take targets so much away from Pickens, but he will be a reliable third down, trustworthy chain mover. And right now, I mean, if your star players go down, most teams are done. I mean, it's just the way it is. This season has been shaped immensely by the star power that's on the sidelines and out for the season. And it happens every year.
Right. But my biggest concern or my biggest question mark isn't so much the ability to get open and things of that nature. It's that the Steelers wide receivers group has had a problem with blocking. And, whether it be George Pickens himself being a bigger body guy, Van Jefferson's also struggled. The other guys might be a little bit too small to fill in those type of roles. Is that why maybe perhaps they would target a bigger wide receiver?
I mean, you'd like that. I mean, last year they had Allen Robertson, and he was a solid blocker.
Yep.
But he didn't catch anything.
No.
Finding both, usually if they can do both at a pretty high level, they're pretty much locked up for a while.
Yeah.
No,
you're right.
Cooper Kupp, one reason I was really excited about maybe the possibility of renting him is he's a good blocker too. But those guys are not readily available. Usually it's one or the other. And the Steelers, for the last couple of years, have went through the season with one starting receiver that was more of a pass catcher and the other one was more of a blocker. We could think back to Darius Hayward-Bay or Boykin or Robertson last year. There's always had that one blocking guy who was out there and he was just basically nobody even covered him. I think Boykin had like 13 passes thrown to him over a 2-year stretch. I mean, it was just you didn't even have to cover the dude.
Yeah, no, I recall. That's why Mason Rudolph had a little bit of success because nobody was expecting the ball to go there.
Yes.
All righty. So I did talk, and I meant Slayton. I think I may have said Slaughter, but
you did.
I meant Slayton. Darius Slayton out of the Giants. I think he's a guy that might move the needle a little bit. He'd be a guy that I'd be interested in. But a lot of folks are also looking at Cortland Sutton from the Broncos. I know the Broncos got their butts handed to them this weekend, but are they completely out of it right now? I don't think so. I think they won 5 games.
Yeah, they're definitely not out of anything in the AFC the way it's set up this year. That's what makes you kind of doubt that the Broncos would be willing they've tried to pick up some guys in the last few years to improve the receiver core. Well, we know Jerry Jeudy, he's with the Browns now, I think.
Yeah.
Some of the guys the only consistent receiver they have is Cortland Sutton. So if they've traded Sutton, they're basically, who's Bo Nix going to throw to? I just don't see that. I really don't.
They were the team that was supposedly the 3 teams that the Steelers were going to be involved with when it came to getting Brandon Ayuk. The Steelers were going to send a couple of picks to the 49ers, and then the 49ers were going to send a couple of picks to Denver to get Cortland Sutton. When they weren't able to do so, that's when things started to halt again. And, if they weren't ready to give up or ready to trade him then, and they're still in position to, even make a wild card run, I'm not certain if they're willing to give him up now, unless he wants out. Now, if he's somebody that's asking, hey, let's I want to be traded or those type of things, then maybe he can force his way out. But I haven't heard any of those type of reports. Have you?
I seen my buddy Big G, Sean Gurley, said that the Browns traded Browning, one of their linebackers, today. I thought they signed him to a contract extension. I did not think they traded him. So I think that people might be thinking the same thing, that they're done with players, but that ain't what I understood. I understood they signed him to a contract extension. So, that's a big difference.
Right. I'll look it up to confirm. But yeah, at the same time, it just didn't make sense for me at that point that they would do something like that. Actually, they did trade for him. The Cardinals traded for Broncos pass rusher Browning.
Well, maybe they give him the extension then when they trade for him. I didn't see he got an extension somewhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, they traded him for a 6th-round pick. That's not very high.
No, because he had like 8.5 sacks last year.
Yeah, that's not very high as far as the amount of capital that they were receiving. If they're taking in, some of their starters off for 6th-rounders, I mean, maybe the Steelers can persuade the Broncos to give up Cortland Sutton. That would be definitely I would think that would be a game changer for the Steelers offense. I think at that point, if they got a guy like Cortland Sutton, I think at that point they are definitely a contender in the AFC. What do you think how far can the Steelers go with a Cortland Sutton?
Well, yeah, Cortland Sutton would definitely be a difference maker. I mean, we've seen some of the catches he's made through the years, circus catches from Russell Wilson in his 2 years there. And even before, with some much worse quarterbacks, he made some of them look pretty good. So I think having Russell Wilson in this offense, you would have to respect Cortland Sutton, because he's not just a reliable number 2. He's borderline number 1 on the Steelers. Because Pickens he is proving things, but he hasn't yet. So, it would be it could definitely be a difference maker. Everybody says they got to win a playoff game this year. Well, I kind of feel that way every year. I really wanted them to decide on this quarterback situation, and I think each week we're feeling more comfortable. So with the quarterback situation seemingly secure, that might make Con say, yeah, we could go ahead and pull the trigger and try to get Cortland Sutton. Because I think the Steelers right now feel more secure about the quarterback situation than they did at any point prior. And that might have been why he didn't go all in on a Hook or on Adams or on any of these other guys, because he wasn't sold on the quarterback. You got to have the guy to get him the ball to make such a big move worthwhile. And I think that he probably feels better about it now.
I would agree. Russell, I agree 100% with what you're saying there as far as the comfortability in the quarterback position. The Steelers said that if Russ looked good, they'd sign him for a couple of years, and I think that may end up coming up in the next there in the offseason. I wouldn't be surprised as long as there's no injury or setback. But yeah, I think that if this were to happen, it would be a huge needle mover for myself. I think that they would definitely be a contender. He had 10 touchdowns, I believe, catching from Russell Wilson last year. So I mean,
Mhm.
that's a pretty good amount for a wide
Oh yeah,
receiver.
it's some incredible catches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, with maybe perhaps not, because if they double cover him, George Pickens going to eat.
Oh yeah.
They cover Pickens. You can't do them both. I mean, if you do, then you got Pat Fryermuth and you have Calvin Austin speed.
Yeah.
You're really, really making this offense elite. And I think in order for this offense to be elite, it just needs that one piece. And I think that if they end up getting a guy like Cortland Sutton, that would be, or even like, DK Metcalf or some of these other receivers, to me, it would have to be like a Cortland, DK Metcalf, or I don't know, something crazy happens and they end up trading for Cup. But it, those would be the guys I think would definitely move the needle. If they don't and they got somebody else, I'm not saying that they aren't a contender and not going to make anything work. It just seems like it would probably be more of depth pieces than anything that's going to be of quality addition to the offense. What do you think?
I've got a like if they would go and get everybody's out on this guy because his best years are in the past. But an Adam Thielen, I like
Mm-hmm.
because he can block. He is a very consistent and reliable receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He's just on a really bad Charlotte team. I mean
Yep.
Carolina team, and so I would I would like to see him if they make a move and they don't have to give up too much. You're either going to have to really go all in if you think this is the year, and then you go for a Metcalf or a Sutton or whatever, and or if you're thinking that you're still going to need next year before you feel like you're a true contender, then you make a smaller move. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what Con and M can work out. But yeah, I'm like you. I just think that the offense is, which we'll talk about it later when we talk about our biggest surprises and disappointments. But
Mm-hmm.
when you see the offensive line development amidst all these injuries, it gives you hope for the future. Finally,
Mm-hmm.
that they are getting the foundation straightened out, and that is going to make everything. Uh, it's going to allow everything that we want to see happen moving forward.
I agree, and I'll be on pins and needles until 4 o'clock tomorrow, waiting for the Steelers to do something because it's probably not going to come in until 3:55 p.m.
That's how they do. Yes.
They're going to wait until the last moment. They've been flirting with this idea since training camp, and it's finally going to come to an end one way or another. We'll be finding out tomorrow that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be adding a new wide receiver to the group. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to be talking more about biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, and a little bit of other news that is in when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back, y'all. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon Watt. This is The Hangover. Before we get into our conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, StillCurrentNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out. Get up-to-the-minute breaking news, any news when it drops at StillCurrentNetwork.com. If that wide receiver trade happens, you'll find out from it there first. And while you're there, go check out our audio podcasts, including my own, which airs out on Saturday mornings called State of the Steelers. You'll be able to check those out at StillCurrentNetwork.com. All righty. So back to the conversation at hand. There's before we get into the biggest surprises and disappointments, Cam Sutton is returning to the field as to the defensive back group. What kind of role do you see Cam in, and does Beanie Bishop role become smaller?
Now, I kind of talked about this on a previous podcast. I truly don't believe that he will because at this point in their careers, Sutton's greatest strength is his versatility,
Mm-hmm.
is his intelligence. Mike Tomlin says one of the smartest players he's ever coached. He can play slot, he can play outside, he can play deep safety, and he did it all his last year at Pittsburgh, and that helped to get him that big contract with Detroit. And, and then, of course, that lasted one season. But now that he's back, he has extreme value. But I just don't think that we're going to see it cut into Bishop, who is coming on as the seasons went on. He made the mid-season all-rookie team. He was rookie of the month, defensive rookie of the month last month. He was defensive rookie of the week the week prior, I think, or last week. And I mean, he is Mike Hilton, but faster and better coverage. Now, he's a rookie. He's going to make some mistakes, but it's a lot of it is the way the secondary is being utilized, and they're not playing to the strengths of their talent. I mean, when you ask Joey Porter Jr. to play zone defense and play off man, you're wasting him. And Bishop is another guy that needs to be physical. When you're smaller and you're going up against bigger guys, a lot of times when they work the matchups and get a bigger receiver on him, how he was able to survive in college as an All-American at WVU is he was very physical and he battled. And he just, he was just like a pesky, dog just nipping at your heels all the time. He affected guys' concentration and he affected their routes because he just disrupted everything. Well, if you're asking him to play off, you're taking away one of his biggest strengths. So I think that we're going to see a lot of Cam, but I think it will be in different packages and in different roles. And actually, if you have a matchup like, I didn't like the matchup when they would get Devontae Adams against Bishop. Now, when he was able to be up on him, I felt comfortable. But that would be something that you would want the crafty guy like Sutton with more experience to match up.
Right.
So I think it'll kind of depend on matchups.
I agree with you. I think matchups is going to be a huge contributor to the role. I think early on it's probably going to be a lot of Beanie Bishop still. Cam Sutton was suspended, so he wasn't allowed even in the facility for multiple weeks throughout, or for the majority of the weeks that he's been gone. He's only been in the building for the last couple of weeks. So, going in there, getting on a moving train this quickly, although he knows the defense and he knows the players around, it's still going to take a little bit of time. And I think, like, as you mentioned with Beanie Bishop's advancement and trajectory, I think that you want to continue to have that. I can see this being very much so like it was with Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton in the past, where there was a rotation here and there. It worked with them. I think it'll work with these guys, and I think also with Cam Sutton out there, you have a better cornerback to fall back on if one of these guys goes down. Dante Jackson's already had a couple of nagging things that's taken him out of in-game stuff, that's taken him out of those games only. Now maybe perhaps he can allow some of those things to, if he ends up having something nagging, he can have those things heal up. We have a guy that's dependable on the outside like Cam Sutton. So I'm excited to see what the Steelers are going to be doing with Cam. I think that we're probably also going to see some more exotic type of stuff. I think that when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, a lot of cover one, high safety over the top. Minka Fitzpatrick has been what the Steelers have been doing. They haven't been hiding it very much. When they have, Minka Fitzpatrick just come out saying that, hey, we need to make it simpler. I think it's a little too simple at this point, and they're going to be going up against some really good quarterbacks in the next few weeks. So I'm expecting to see some more disguises and things of that nature. And that might be when we might see maybe Cam Sutton be implemented more on those type of pass plays where they're going to have to disguise things against some of these good quarterbacks. But that's kind of where I sit there. Zach Frazier is back. He was in the first team lineup practicing today. I think McCollum did a fantastic job, in filling in. I think that he's probably earned himself a position with the Steelers as a depth piece for a while now. But Zach is back. What are your thoughts on how much better this offense can look with Zach Frazier now in the lineup?
I based on what I was hearing, had that been they were going into playoffs after the injury. I think Frazier would have toughed it out. I think he'd have played. I mean, that's the toughness level of Zach Frazier. But the Steelers are like, no need. With the Jets and the Giants coming up, we want you healthy for the second half. You have the bye week. Now I think he's 100%. He's back. And now McCormick has even more experience. Samalu's back entrenched at left guard. And of course, you have Moore and Jones. I think the offensive line is only going to improve if they can avoid the injury bug for a while. I think that we're going to see. I think Frazier and McCormick can be special together. I think that they're two guys. Their mentality, their playing style is a perfect fit. They play off each other. They hang out together off the field. There's a chemistry and a unity there that I think can make this offensive line special because Samalu might be gone next year too. And they have other young guys they can move in. Fuatanu, they can move to guard and pick him up another tackle. And there's different things they could do. But I think that they've really struggled on that offensive line since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they finally have got it addressed. When you have three guys, if realistically, from last year's draft that would have been starting if it wasn't for Fuatanu's injury. So I'm very excited about this. This is going to change everything for the running game, for the passing game. And just having Frazier back, I believe that the offense is going to do even better. But like as you said, I have to give credit where credit is due. McCollum played excellent. I mean, he was thrust in there, first time starting, first time, being that signal caller at center of the offense. And I think he exceeded everybody's expectations. So I feel very confident. I would rather have him than I would rather had Cole from last year.
Mm-hmm.
He did much better than Cole ever did last year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, another thing that we're finally seeing the Steelers' investments in the offensive line and Pat Myers' coaching, we're finally starting to see results.
I agree. And to be honest with you, I'd rather see, McCullum in there as left guard if need be versus what we saw to Spencer Anderson. I think that he jumps
Spencer. Good,
yeah, he's jumps. I think he is probably the next in line if anybody on the interior offensive line were to go down for any reason. And so I think that highly of his performance that he has had thus far. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited for the kid. I mean, he's only going to get better. He's pretty young. And, Isaac Seumalo's up there. I'm sure he's going to get an extension. He's probably got a few years. But to have somebody like McCollum backing up the Steelers in case of an emergency, for the guys that are up there right now, I couldn't be happier with his performance.
I think two more starting centers went down this weekend. For the season-ending injuries or substantial injuries. I mean, you just got to have depth. I mean, you really do. And McCollum, man, what a great job he did.
I agree. Which brings us up to the biggest surprises and the biggest disappointments. I'm sure McCollum's going to be high on the biggest surprises, as we were just talking about him. Mm-hmm. But who are your biggest surprises, if you could name a few?
Well, for my biggest surprises, it's the offensive line in general. The fact that they've been able to overcome, I mean, in the past, one injury was just that, and they had years where the guys hardly missed any time, but they just wasn't any good. Mm-hmm. And now, you think, oh man, they have an injury with all these young guys. Well, I mean, I didn't think McCormick could be ready till next year. Now, Big G, my podcast partner, Pump Your Brakes, he was like, no, I think he's ready. And I'm like, coming from, South Dakota, I didn't think he would be, but he was. Mm-hmm. And he's been excellent. In ways, he fits the offensive line better than James Daniels. Mm-hmm. And so I knew Frazier was ready, but it looked like Fuatanu was going to be ready if he hadn't got hurt.
Yeah.
And so I've been very pleased with the offensive line. I've been, I think Peyton Wilson has met every expectation for me. I mean, he just, you can see it just clicking every week that he's reacting quicker and he's more comfortable, and that speed. I mean, he just covers so much ground. Mm-hmm. but you can say the same thing about Nick Herbig. You know, we got to get him back in there. But when he's in there, what a difference maker. I mean, you take White out, you take Highsmith out on passing downs, you don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's saying something because both of them guys are excellent players, but Herbig is a beast. So, you know, there's been multiple guys who've really stepped up. You say surprises, like we all thought, you know, Daryl Washington could be what he is and do what he's doing right now, but you know, he just never got the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But we're starting to see that, and they're utilizing him. And then on the defensive side, you can't talk about surprises without Dante Jackson. You know, they thought he was like a throw in that trade.
Mm-hmm.
No, that guy is balling.
Mm-hmm.
And playing across from JPJ, I mean, I think he's doing incredible. But then the best addition is not Patrick Queen, it's Deshaun Elliott. Elliott has been a beast. He is, I mean, as much as I love Terrell Edmonds and thought that he was underrated as a great teammate and security blanket, you know, just the ultimate team player, Deshaun Elliott is an upgrade over anybody they've had for a long time. So, yeah, those are my surprises. You know, I wanted to try to keep it to 3, but then I get excited. But I really, that you just every bit of this, and then you even got to throw in the special teams because this is, you know, this is Danny Smith's best year.
Yep.
So that there's a lot of hope for the second half of this season.
I agree. I mean, the special teams alone is on pace for some historic numbers. It's insane.
Yeah.
You know, which was something that I don't think a lot of folks were anticipating. I think there was a lot of concerns about gunners and return men and how this was going to look. And there was the new kickoff rule. And so far, the Pittsburgh Steelers special teams has handled it. You know, they should actually have more stats than what they have if it weren't for the refs. And it's been one of the biggest surprises, the special teams. For me, on my bigger surprises, I'm going to go with just a couple of players that'll highlight that I thought had the biggest surprise. You know, obviously, McCullum and McCormick are going to be in there because I don't think either one of them were expected to start anything this season. They weren't expected to be there. There were some guys that were technically raw and that were going to be built up on. And they've surpassed those expectations. But the biggest surprise for me on the offensive line is Dan Moore. You know, what Dan Moore has been able to do this year, this has been his best year as a tackle. He's been, you know, arguably because of Frazier's injury, Dan Moore has been arguably game in, game out, one of the better offensive linemen, you know, for the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the entire season. And, you know, a lot of people wanted to get rid of him. And had the Steelers gone and done that and gone with the expectation of having Broderick Jones on the left and Fautanu on the right with the injury to Fautanu, I mean, the Steelers would be in some deep trouble without Dan Moore right now.
They would.
You know, I think he's made a case for him to get a contract extension at the end of this season, and I think the Steelers would be foolish if they didn't try to keep him. Defensively, I like the guys that you mentioned in the trade. I think that those guys were definitely big improvements to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but a big surprise for me. And, you know, maybe and it shouldn't be a surprise because this man has been doing it for such a long time. But he had a couple of injuries last year. Some people thought he wasn't able to do it. A lot of people got in his business when it came to his financials. And that's Cam Sutton. Cam Hayward. I tricked everybody, didn't I? Not just kidding. Cam Hayward. You know, everybody was doubting him. Everybody was saying that he didn't deserve the contract, even though I thought the contract was team friendly. You know, it was mostly prove it deals every single year. And he's gone out there and shown that that deal was not just adequate, but that may have been team friendly in that sense, 100%. You know, Cam Hayward is a future Hall of Famer in my opinion, and he's just showing it every single year. So those are my biggest surprises for the offense and defense. Now let's transition to some of the disappointing players. Where do you start off with on that list?
Well, the disappointments, you know, to me, I have to start out with the usage of the personnel on defense.
Mhm.
As I've said before, this off man, soft zone, um, you know, not changing up your pass rush schemes, sending extra blitzers at times, just relying on your front four over and over and over, and then playing off. You're letting guys that are not that good, Danny Jones or O'Connell for the Raiders, whoever you want to say, find a rhythm by throwing to wide open guys. If it's 7-8 yards, it's still 7-8 yards. You're setting up, second and third and short. I mean, this defense is too high paid and too talented to be that soft. So that usage irritates me greatly. I have to say, Keanu Benton has been a disappointment to me. They're getting gashed against the rush at times, and that is very scary when you're getting ready to play the Ravens twice and the Browns rushing attack and the Eagles and some other teams that's coming up. They're going to have a tough time if they can't figure out a way to shore up this rush defense. Now, I said all off season, I want a big tackle. Get us a big defensive tackle. Get us a run stuffer. Because they're sliding Hayward in a little, and they got Benton, but neither one of them are nose tackles.
Mhm.
I don't even consider either guy a real defensive tackle. Benton needs to be an end, and Hayward is more effective in end and get you a big body in the middle. And they don't have that. They do not have a big body defensive tackle they can bring in. So I think one of the reasons Benton isn't playing up to where I expected is because he's playing out of position. The next guy would have to be Patrick Queen. Now, I've gotten past the fact he was a Raven by seeing him in the Steelers uniform. But I think he misses Roquan Smith so badly. The freedom that they give him. I think wearing the green dot still affects him. He's still not the same player that I watched play for the Ravens. And I know that the Steelers got him at a good price. So I'm not as upset about it. But I just think they're wasting his ability by not allowing him to be more aggressive, play more freely, and attack the football. Because when he has to hesitate, it's kind of like Najee Harris. When he runs, if he keeps the momentum, it's great. If he has to stop, plays over. And same thing with Patrick Queen. If he has to hesitate, he's easily blockable. He gets taken out of the play. So I think that a lot of these things that are my disappointments are on the defensive side of the ball. I guess because of the money that's there. Really, I'm being honest. But I think that we need to see adjustments before they hit and go up against the Ravens team that is built to exploit their weaknesses.
Yeah, and I heard Calais Campbell might be on the trade block. Would a trade for Calais, move the needle for you on the defensive line?
I don't know at this point. Man, watching the Colts play last night against Minnesota and Grover Stewart, that was a joker that I wanted so bad because that guy is a mountain. I mean, he the only guy that I see put Frazier on his butt so far this year was Grover Stewart. And I guarantee if you talk to Frazier would be like, that's the strongest guy I've ever went up against. I mean, he tosses bodies. I mean, he really does. He's like a bouncer in a bar. He just goes in and cleans house.
Yeah.
And I just think that he was available. And that was a guy that really would like to see the Steelers win after.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they need a guy like that. I don't know at this point, Calais Campbell's maybe 38.
Yeah.
Or I mean, he's up there. And, he was a great, great player and a great individual. Now, I'm sure he can give you short stretches of that, but I don't know if he's a big-time answer at this age.
That's true. And since you tackled the defense, I'll tackle the offense on the disappointments. We'll start off with what Dennis says with the $2 super chat. The usage of Muth. Man, they just paid the man, and they're still not using him. In the manner that they should be. He's had some games when he's been targeted. Everybody remembers the Cincinnati Bengals game last year where he had like 13 targets and like 13 catches or something like that, and all sorts of numbers. He can be that guy. The Steelers offense, for whatever reason, just isn't highlighting him at this point. To me, though, one of the biggest, obviously the biggest disappointment for me on the offensive side is Broderick Jones. I thought that his play should have been better than what it is. I know he's had some injury things that have happened early in the season, but the braces are off. He no longer has those things. It sounds like he's healthy, and yet he's still struggling. And it doesn't seem like a lot of the struggles that he's having is due to injury as much as it is due to mental mistakes. I think he's maybe getting that paralyzation of analyzation type of syndrome thing going on, or maybe he's thinking too much, because there's been literally times where the ball is snapped and he's like doesn't look certain, and sometimes he just stood there. Then it's happened on a couple of occasions. So to me, Broderick Jones has been a disappointment. I don't think he's a bust yet. He was very young. He's very raw. He had limited amount of starts in Georgia. He had a limited amount of snaps or starts last year as an offensive lineman. I think he just hit his full year, 16 starts in the NFL, like within the last game or two. And so I think the expectation of him maybe shouldn't be as high, but I mean, he's a first round pick that the Pittsburgh Steelers traded up to get. He should be a guy that was ready to rock and roll come week one of season one. And right now I see him as a disappointment. Right now I think that if Troy Fautanu was healthy, I don't think Broderick Jones is on the field. And so
yeah, I mean, especially the way he looked in the preseason too. But again, everything I heard before he was drafted, every single draft analysis, left tackle, left tackle, left tackle. It always been a left tackle. They drafted him to be a left tackle, and you put a guy on the right side, and I still think a lot of his confidence has been shaken playing out of position, and as you say, what I call the paralysis of overanalysis is when you think too much and then you get overwhelmed with everything in your mind and your thought process, and you end up doing nothing. So that's why the ball snapped and he's like a deer in headlights. And that's unacceptable, yes. But I just think that he's so focused on, well, I got to get this foot moving and I got to get this. And, it's not natural. And as we know that when the game slows down for you, it gets easier when you get into that comfort zone where you're just competing and you're not overthinking.
Yeah, I think that, the flip-flopping too probably didn't help. Moving him from left to right and those type of things. I know he did that in Georgia, but this is the NFL. Things are a lot more complicated than the college playbook. A lot of things are dependent on what the player sees. In college, you'll see, if there's any audibleization or anything like that, every player looks at the sideline to see what the coaches are saying and doing. None of them make the decision for themselves. And so to think that he would have to now come in and start making those decisions and also learn for both sides, I think that's asking a lot, especially for somebody who came into the NFL at 21 years old. So he is pretty young. I'm not calling him a bust. I'm just calling him a disappointment for this year. I do think that he can be better. I think eventually he will take over as the left tackle. He's just going to have to get there. I think his play has been okay of recent. I think there's still some plays where it's not varsity all the time. There's some JV plays.
Every game.
Yeah, every game that has come out, there's some JV plays.
Too. Yeah.
And if he can clear those up, I think he'll be he can better off his career. Just don't count him out. Don't give him a hard time. I know he was getting in a fight with some folks on Twitter, or X now, I think is what it's called, because they're giving him some mess about his play on the field. He's a young guy. He's trying his best. He's not trying to lose for the team. But, he is struggling. He is the one that's struggling the most on the offensive line. And I hope that he can get this together, because these games are going to start All the games that he's played have counted, but these games here against the AFC North and the AFC opponents, those are going to start counting a lot more, and especially down late in the season. So Steelers have put themselves in a pretty good position. They can't, let it go away. So for me, I think those are going to be my main disappointments on the offensive side. If I had to say a third one, it'd probably be running backs not named Najee Harris. Nobody else, nobody else has gotten really moving. Even Najee had some struggles early on in the season. Jalen Warren has been hurt in and out of the lineup. So
Mhm.
is Cordell Patterson, and so we really haven't seen that 1-2 punch yet. Fortunately, Najee's been able to give us the 1-2 punch on his own these last couple of weeks. I expect Jalen Warren to start getting more acclimated to the speed of the game and getting more comfortable with the game, given how much time he was missing. And I think we've already seen evidence of the flash that he's bringing back. So I'm excited for what they're going to be able to do. But up to this point, I would say I'm a little bit disappointed in the running backs not named Najee Harris in the last few weeks. Um, Anybody you want to add to either side before we go into our ending here?
No, I think we agreed on every point. I think pretty much the community agrees. It's the strengths are really obvious. The weaknesses are thankfully things we think can be remedied. That there is solutions and fixes to them. Hopefully,
Mhm.
whether it's player usage or trade, even which is going to be real interesting through tomorrow. But yeah, I feel better at this juncture, midway point, than I have in a while because I see the needle pointing upward, and I see room for improvement, which is something that we always couldn't say.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm excited. I want to see. Washington's going to be a good test coming up,
Mhm.
and we've seen that they are a good team. They're a team. The fan base is crazy behind them. They've been waiting on this. They got their quarterback and they're ready to roll. So this is going to test the Tomlin's record against rookie quarterbacks and the defense. And I don't think they need to let Daniels get in rhythm. I think they need to, as you said earlier, start being a little more exotic in their coverages, a little bit more versatile and creative. And because if you're going to have a tough day if you let him get going. So, um, but no, I thought it was I was really pleased with how much uh, that even the things that are not where they need to be, we see real possibilities of ways to improve in those areas that are realistic options and realistic possibilities. So I'm just ready for the second half.
I am too. This team is heating up. It's not hot yet. They have the possibility of getting there. And like I've said it, multiple times, if you're getting hot at the right time going into the later part of the
Mhm.
season, that's always what you want. You want to drive that momentum into the playoffs. And so let's keep this up. Let's keep this momentum going for the Pittsburgh Steelers as a fan base. Let's continue to cheer and go out to the games, which also means I have a couple of tickets available if anybody wants to buy some. You can reach me at stateofthesteelers@gmail.com. But with that being said, guys, I hope everybody has a good night. This was a great conversation. Uh, Shannon, you have any final words or anything before we let everybody out? Goodbyes.
Nope, just appreciate everybody and check us out Wednesday night on Pump Your Brakes.
There you go. See you guys then. Until next time, Shannon, take us out.